Welcome to Commander Pop Culture, a place to gather magical information with some laughs, might I add. Hello everyone, I'm going to be going over my deck tech for Agatha of the Vile Cauldron, which is all about creature activations and mana sinks, because she reduces the mana sink costs, including herself. So she herself has a mana sink to give other creatures I control +1/+1 and trample, and haste till end of turn. That could be a significant thing. Just the combo with herself, I just need to get her 4 power, and then for a red and green pip, I give everything in my board haste and trample, and a stat increase, and I can do that however many times I have access to red or green mana. Typically, that's not how the deck wins, so I'm going to show you how the deck does win. I'll go over my picks and some of the things I came across in terms of build challenges. Every card that I recommend in this list is $5 or less. I wanted things to be affordable for everybody if they have an interest in building this deck. My picks are pretty competitive nonetheless, so if you are playing Magic with a hobby of it being affordable and budget-friendly, and at the same time you could compete.
The good cheap stuff.
This is a good list to start from. We will get started with the 1-drops. Audacity. The intention of this card is to enchant your commander, so you get the power increase of 2. The nice thing about this enchantment is it replaces itself should it be put in the graveyard. That's quite nice. Birds of Paradise is a mana dork. It's cheap. If I play mana dorks, they're typically 1 mana or less, but I made some exceptions in this deck. Bloodforged Battle Axe. I like this because it copies itself. So if you get an early chip damage in, or you could just keep on equipping them to Agatha and get her power to a point where you get to the real ideal number that you want. When I was constructing this deck, I determined that the magic number is actually a power of 7, because then it officially reduces everything to just 1 pip to activate. Some of the mana sinks I'll show you all have 8 at max in terms of, I guess, an activation cost. Bone Splitter, same story, only it doesn't copy itself. Magus of Candelabra, this is actually my only X activation. You untap X lands. The beauty of X activations is you could determine its number. Say Agatha is 1. She doesn't have any other modifying things attached to her. I could untap 2 lands with Magus for 1 mana. So I'm netting mana in that scenario. And then the number increases. He's really good. Rancor, another stat boost, and it returns itself to your hand if it goes to your graveyard. Solid. Some rocks, mana production kind of stuff. Wild Growth and Utopia's Sprawl, they were some of my all-time favorites. If you never ran these, they're much safer than your typical permanent that ramps you mana. It gets mana back to you the turn you play it if you do it correctly. If you play turn 1, it doesn't do anything, but say you played on turn 2 and you put it on the untapped land, you get 2 mana to use the same turn you play it. Braid is just a really flexible removal spell. Some more rocks. Blackblade Reforged, it is in here, so you could easily get Agatha up to 7 power. You would only need 6 lands in play and 1 permanent to get there. It was an easy include for me. Dragon Whisperer. Now, I have a lot to say about the token generators, because I purposely didn't include a lot of them. This is probably the only token generator I included, mostly because the token is worth your time.
Go big or go home.
If you have Formidable, which should be easy to do in this deck, Formidable's power requirement of 8 is all you need. If Agatha has 4 power, then the Formidable cost is only 2 red. And in that scenario, I get to make a 4/4 dragon as many times as I've managed to sink into this. This Dragon Whisperer also has fire breathing and can give itself flying. It's a pretty dense card. There were some other token generators that I could have ran in here, like Ant Queen or Namada, and I forget that it's Jade something that makes sap rollings. It's up to you. Like, I'm sinking 2 mana to make a 4/4 with the Dragon Whisperer. Well, the other ones I'm just making 1/1s. I might make room for the Jade creature that makes sap rollings, just because I think that's nice and efficient. The Ant Queen and Namada are 5 and 6 mana, so they're not very efficiently costed to get the effect that I want immediately. At the very least, I probably should make room for Jade. And there's also a Goblin that makes 1/1s. I couldn't include that in this deck because I wouldn't be able to feature on Moto. It's a Jumpstart exclusive card, and not everything that has came out in paper is available on Moto. The cards I've also chose from are things I could feature on the channel for all y'all to see and how it does. When I do these kind of deck build, I also make another video featuring what it can do. And that's just the show that I practice what I preach, and that I actually buy the cards that I'm recommending to folks. Prove I'm not just full of talk. Duskwatch Recruiter is a card advantage. Hopefully you're sinking only one green pip to look at the top 3 cards for another creature and put it in your hand. It's a really nice deal. If someone doesn't play a spell on their turn, it flips over to the werewolf side, and it's just a coupon for creatures. Honestly, would prefer it stays on its human side. Flamekin Spitfire. I like this card because I could use it to plink off other people's stuff. I like to be interactive in my games. You never know when there's something in play that has to go before you could advance to win. Having this flexibility is quite nice. I never played Goblin Anarchomancer. This is one of the exceptions of Mana Dorks. It gives you a coupon for all your green and red spells, so it makes a lot of sense. Hero's Blade auto-equips to your commander, gets it up to 4 power, and then you could start actually using her own ability to pump up your other stuff and giving haste. Hull Breach, it's a sorcery that could blow up an artifact or enchantment, and then if there are 2 in play, or both of those in play, you could blow up both of them. I don't see enough people running Hull Breach. It's just a nice 2-for-1 kind of a spell. Illusionist Bracers, this is in the deck to purely reduce the number of activations required by 1. There is an infinite combo in this deck. When you pair this up with Sylvanu's Invoker, if I get Agatha up to 7 power, for 1 mana investment, I untap a target land I control. Becomes an 8/8 elemental with trample. If I have Illusionist Bracers attached to this, I do that twice. So you officially net 1 mana. You make infinite mana. You could use that to invest into more sinks to win the game. That's the only infinite setup in this deck. It's just how it shaped out. And I think most of the time with Illusionist Bracers, it's exclusively just to save you a mana investment for another activation. Incubation Druid, this is another one of those exception mana dorks, is it could tap for 3. Once I get a +1/+1 counter on it, which should be easy because the adaptability is also a mana sink that I could reduce in cost. Seems really fun to try. Counter Transformation. This is a dense card. I love when cards could fit in multiple kind of slot types because I typically run at the very least 12 single target removal spells, 12 card advantage cards, and 2 board wipes minimally. And Counter Transformation is dense because it fits both a card advantage slot and a removal slot. Whenever you get that as a card option to include in your deck, I highly suggest you do it because it helps, especially when you have multiple cards that have this kind of like finger being dipped into multiple pots. It adds up. Museum Mortars, single target removal, which is also a board wipe. Aureate Mountains Blaze. This lets you dig for a thing that you need. You just keep discarding 1 card to see another card, as long as you have red mana to invest. Questing Druid is the card advantage piece. It's new in Wilds of Eldraine, so I get the feature in the channel, but I really love impulse effects that let you see cards not only to use on your turn, but on the following turn, and that's what this does. Reckless Impulse, same story for the card advantage slot. Soulbright Flamekin, once you activate this creature's ability 3 times, you get 8 mana back. Without even having to manipulate Agatha's power, it's already reduced to 1. You invest 3 mana to get 8 mana, so you net 5. It's really nice. The other thing that's cool about this card is you could activate it on other people's turns. You could use that mana to invest into another sink. You're just transforming your mana into more mana for later. It's kind of fun. Sword of the Chosen makes my commander a little bit bigger for the turn. Augur of Autumn. I've had a lot of luck with this card. It's much better than people give it credit for. I think people avoid it because of the Coven mechanic, but it allows you to play lands from the top of your library. If you meet the Covenant requirement, which is you need 3 creatures of different powers in play, it's really easy to do in this deck because you're all about manipulating the power of your creatures already. So it just incidentally happens. Once you have Coven, it lets you play creatures off to the top of your deck. It's a creature-based deck. There's 31 creatures, 33 lands. You have 64 potential hits with Augur of Autumn. It's definitely worth you trying if you're a creature-based deck and are in green. It's also very affordable at $3. Balls Invoker.
You got weird balls.
This is the magic number that I was talking about where if Agatha is at 7, for 1 mana, I get to do 4 damage to each opponent. It's a win condition. Champion's Helm protects my commander and gives it a stat boost. I also run Hammer and Nazan for the same purpose. Dawnheart Mentor, again, it goes to that Coven mechanic, but I could target a creature to give it +3/+3 and trample till the end of turn. This is another reason why I'm not too gung-ho about making tokens, is because I could just make a singular lethal attacker and finish people off that way and just go really tall with a single thing. Because this deck is very dense with win conditions, I could win by dealing non-combat damage, I could deal with combat damage, and I'll show you here in a little bit another way that I could win without doing traditional combat damage. The other thing that could be kind of cheeky is you target your own commander with this and get her up to the power you need, and then reduce future activations for later. Delayed Fire Blast, it's a board wipe. I never had the pleasure of trying this out for myself, so I'm really excited to see it if I do get to play it. Does 2 damage to everything except your own board, and then if you foretell it, it does 5. Pretty excited to try that out. Elder Laurels, again, gives stat boosts where X number of creatures you control. Flamekin Invoker does 5 damage to a player or planeswalker. Guardian Augmenter protects my commander and gives a stat boost. Or card advantage. Ronus the Indomitable. I like the sync a lot because unlike the traditional gods where they're enchantments, this one is always a creature. It's just the only clause it has is if it can attack or block, and that's only determined if you have 4 power or greater in play. He has a really small sync where for 3 mana you give something +2/+0 and trample till end of turn. He's very resilient, and you can't just kill it unless you have an exile or a bounce spell. That's where he sets himself apart from everybody else, is that he's a sync that protects himself, and it's very appreciated, and he's efficiently costed for 3 mana. This is the third way the deck can win, is with Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. It's a biorhythm for a formidable activation. This is another exception I made. Sorcery Speed, because it's a win condition. If you don't know what Biorhythm does, it's fair because it's actually a banned card in EDH. But it's on a creature here. 11 mana? Each player's life total becomes the total of creatures that player controls. If someone's playing a life gain deck, you're gonna piss them off with that thing because he just undid all their work. We already talked about Sylvanu's Invoker. Song of the Dryads. I love auras that neuter commanders and are difficult to remove, so this falls in the category of Imprison of the Moon, Oubliette, and Darksteel Mutation. Typically when this enchants something, it's there forever, and there's nothing anybody could do about it. Valakut Invoker, another sync. This guy's pretty cool because it lets me target anything and does 3 damage. It's much better than 1 damage to ping. Awakening, it affects everybody, but you being the mana sync deck, could definitely use the mana much more efficiently than everybody else at the table. I'm going to be using it in such a manner that it kind of breaks the symmetry a bit. Bear Umbra, stat boost, protects my commander, and untaps my lands for more activations. That's a really dense card. Captivating Crew could steal people's blockers, or just steal very scary creatures in general for a turn and beat on people to death. Halana and Alina. I like this creature because it gives the stat boost the turn I play it, and you just pick your commander and you put 2 counters on it. The reason why I'm playing this over something like Forgotten Ancient is because Forgotten Ancient I have to wait a full revolution at the table before I can move the counters on Forgotten Ancient onto my commander. That's just not good enough, and that's why it didn't make the cut. Ignite the Future. I like this card advantage spell because you get 3 on the first cast, and you have until your following turn to cast or play them. And then it has a flashback cost of 8. And if you do it for its flashback cost, you get to cast and play those cards for free. 6 cards on a single card. It's pretty good value. Curd Chieftain gives stat boost and evasion on a sync. Leafkin Avenger. It's a really big mana dork that could give you a ton of mana if you have enough power 4 or greater creatures in play. And it kind of feeds into itself where you could use that mana to pay its sync cost of dealing damage to a player planeswalker equal to the creature's power. Seems pretty sweet. Wilderness Reclamation untaps all your lands on your end step, so you get more activations on other people's turns. Wildheart Invoker. This is another magic number card, gives target creature +5/+5 and trample. Escape the Wilds, this is one of my bigger card advantage spells, gives you an impulse effect for 5 cards. I like the rate of that. When you could get 1 card per 1 mana you invest, that's a good deal. And it lets you play additional lands for that turn. Skargan Hellkite, it's another plinker, lets you shoot off other people's stuff. You just have to elect to put the +1/+1 counter on Skargan rather than giving it haste, and the sync is available to you, and it does 2 damage to any target. Livia's Attendants, this is a kind of a fun one that I never played before. It has a sync to deal 1 damage to anything, but once it does damage to anything, you create that many blood tokens, and you could use those blood tokens to find whatever it is you need. The blood token is 1 mana to discard and draw a card. Soul Neurofrexia, board protection. This seems like a wet dream where you invest 1 mana to give every permanent on your board indestructibility. You just need Agatha to get to 4 power to do it. And you could activate it from your graveyard should, I don't know, that happens. Let's talk about the mana base. In particular, every land in here has the potential to come in untapped. I hate tapped lands. I've died 1 too many times playing Magic because of a tapped land.
Don't
do it.
So I don't do it, and I don't recommend anyone to do that. You could build affordable mana bases for dirt cheap, and basics are perfectly fine. But I want to talk about the utility ones. Castle Garenbrig, I like it because not only can you use the activation for creature spells, but you could also use it for activated abilities. Forge of Heroes, if there's ever a scenario where you don't want to play your commander and you have this in play, or something else happens, it just gives you flex to put a counter on your commander and make her a little bit bigger when she comes down that turn. Same with Opal Palace, the same reason. And that's a deck. If you watch any of my previous videos, I typically go with search engines and use EDH rec to find the cards that I want and build this from scratch, but I'm a little strapped for time, and I don't know, maybe people appreciate a shorter video, and I did take the time to talk about things on a case-by-case basis that are unique to the deck. So I wonder if people appreciate that. Let me know in the comments below if you like a shorter video, or if you preferred me going through EDH rec and going through search engines and talking about why cards don't make the cut and why they do. Also, if you have any questions about my picks in here, feel free to ask in the comments below. I'm a small channel. I don't get a lot of chatter. I'm always willing to help or make things more understandable for everybody. Don't feel like any question's a bad question. I don't believe that. I think everyone deserves to have the same amount of information. I hope you all enjoyed. Everyone have a great time. Bye.